Welcome to Land Speed Legends, a podcast talking to the men, the women, the legends that make land speed racing great. Discover the stories of these ordinary people whose passion for land speed racing has made them legendary. And now, here's your host, the Bonneville Belle, the High Boy Honey, the Salt Princess, Allison Volk-Dean.
Okay, welcome to Legends of Land Speed Racing. Today we have the legendary Jeff Nish. This is my first guest who isn't my blood relative, but I would definitely consider him family. This man has raced a lot. He started circle track racing before he moved on to setting records at Bonneville. He became a Bonneville 200 mile an hour club member in 1986. He decided that wasn't fast enough, so he went for a blue hat and was successful in gaining entrance into the 300 mile an hour chapter of the 2 Club. He is a family man of epic proportions and is responsible for getting his wife, son, nephews, and all of their friends involved in racing. This podcast is going to be almost as thrilling as a trip to impound.
Well, that's
okay. Good. All right. Thank you, Jeff, for coming. I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
My pleasure.
Great. All right. Well, let's start with your upbringing in racing and just start with wherever you want to start with, sprint car racing or other racing.
You know, I have 2 brothers, as you know, and our father was, I would call, a legendary sprint car driver.
Yes.
He was in the 60s. He was at Ascot, running in CRA, running dirt, running asphalt. He was the captain of the United States racing team in South Africa, I think like 7 times.
Wow.
And so we grew up in the shop. We grew up, you know, around sprint cars, around race cars, and I guess it was just our destiny. We all knew that when we were 14 that we would start racing. That was just a given.
Yeah.
And so at 14, I started racing mini stocks at Bonneville Raceway, and then I moved on to sprint cars at 15. And by the early 20s, we were all chasing Indianapolis.
Wow.
Mike had gotten a ride with A.J. Voigt.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
I was running the AIS series, IndyCar series, and trying to break into the speedway. And unfortunately, that didn't happen, but it did open other doors that I didn't know were there. My wife and I bought a racetrack down in Springville, and for 7 years, we ran a NASCAR sanctioned track down there. But the Salt Flats, it never crossed my mind. We just growing up, my dad and your dad went to the Salt Flats as teenagers. Right. And they were like, we're going to build a car and we're going to do this. Well, your dad went that direction while my dad was running sprint cars, right?
Yeah.
So it's a legacy that is, I've been happy to pass on to my kids and my nephews. And I've been happy to be involved with your father for 40 years now.
Yeah, that's crazy to think.
Over 40 years.
Yeah.
Best racing partner I've ever had. Larry and I never disagree on the plan.
Yeah.
We disagree on the changes we make when we get there, the execution of the plan, but we never disagree on the plan, right?
Yeah. And I remember you coming over and me and Jonathan playing in my backyard in the old North Salt Lake.
I'm going to say you were probably 8, 10?
Yeah.
8 or 10 years old.
And I remember going down to your racetrack, and that was always really a lot of fun.
So a common friend of ours, Brian Schaefer, he called me up one day and he said, and I'd probably met your dad, sometime around my dad's race shop or something. But and also my dad worked for your grandpa.
Oh, yeah.
My dad, that's how my dad and your dad met, but my dad was a welder for your grandpa at the pit, at the sand pit.
Yeah, that's right.
So Brian Schaefer called me one day and he says, hey, do you want to go 200 miles an hour? And I'm like, yeah, I'm in, And he goes, well, come down to the shop. And so I went down to Brian's shop and your dad was there and he had taken the Roadster down. And Brian and I, the deal was we'd get it put together and we would go through the licensing process. And so we went out and we got up to our A licenses A200, right?
And is that in the Roadster? Okay, in the 59
in
Roadster.
The 59 Roadster.
The Highboy.
So it was a USFRA meet, and Brian and I just drove. Like I said, you were young.
Yeah.
And we drove, and we both got our A licenses. And I think for Brian, that was enough.
Yeah.
For me, I was hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
And so when we were done, I was with your dad, like, okay, like, how do I get going with this deal, And so he introduced me to Rick Vesco.
Yes.
It was just in passing. Rick was coming by the pit, and your dad said, Rick, I want you to meet Jeff. And we shook hands, and Rick went away. Well, later in that meet, I went down to Rick Vesco's pit because I wanted to see the car. And Rick was there having a heated discussion with a gentleman about the next meet. And Rick was explaining to him, look, we blew the motor. I don't have any engines. We're not going to be able to do this. I don't even know what this was.
Yeah.
But I knew I had an engine sitting in my shop. And I said, Rick, I have an engine if you need to use it. The guy didn't even know me. I mean, we had just met, like your dad had just...
Which this is so Salt Flats,
right?
too. Like, I got an engine.
I said, I have an engine if you need it. And Rick looked at me like I was interrupting his conversation, right? Yeah. And so I kind of went away with my tail between my legs. And Monday morning, my phone rings and it's Rick.
Yeah.
What kind of motor you got? And I said, well, I got a 360 Chevy, bolt right in your car. And he said, well, what do you want out of it? And I said, when you're done, I want to drive it. And so he's okay. Good enough. So they were doing car top skiing. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
They screwed the skis on top of the car. And then the person would get in the...
Wild times out of
Wild times. So he... So they got done with that, and I get in the car, and Rick's giving me all my instructions, and going over it and over. And you cannot go over 250 because I had my A license, right? So I was getting my double A. Cannot go over 250. Going over it and over and over it with attack. And for those of you that know Salt Flats legends, Don Vesco, Rick's brother, came over and sat down on the side of the car, and he looked around. Rick was gone. He goes, just mash it. Just run her down there as hard as she'll go.
Which is so like Don like.
Yes.
I mean, that just, yes.
And so I did, and I ran 280 miles an hour, and Rick was not happy.
He was pissed.
Don was happy.
So was this for your red hat?
No, this was how this all got started, right? So now... when that meet was over, Rick came over and said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to get in the 2 Club. And he says, do you have a project in mind? I said, I do. I know a guy that makes V4 Chevys. And I said, that's what I'd like to do. And he said, take the car with you. I left that meet with Rick's car in the back of my truck.
Oh, wow.
So, you go from an introduction a month before from your dad to taking the car home and building a V4.
Wild.
Building a V4. So we used the back 4 cylinders of a Chevy. We cut the motor in half, Jimmy Wysong and I. We cut the motor in half with a bandsaw, and Jimmy just concocted the motor plates and the crankshafts and everything, and we ran 220 miles an hour with that in Rick's car.
Nice.
I think the only record I've got in your dad's car was your record.
Yes. You went after.
You went 236, and I went like 236 and like 1 decimal point.
Oh, I know.
Faster than you. So
didn't last very long, darn it.
Well, they're not there to last.
No, that's right. That's right.
They're there to be broken. And for your audience, these records that are out there, you look in the book. If there's a record in that book, it was not done by somebody stupid.
Right.
Whoever is holding that record, you can bet was very smart and very savvy and spent some time and possibly a lot of money to put that number in the book. And so when we look at this, taking somebody's record away, we do that with, I think, some respect.
Right.
Going in, right? That we know that somebody put a lot of effort into that. That 220 mile an hour record also, then I did the FIA.
So wait, was that 220? Was that the 2 club record?
That was the 2 club record.
That was to get you your red hat in the 200 mile an hour club. Yep. Okay, so now we do the FIA record.
So then I did the FIA record, same motor. We had some problems, and we went 201, right? But the record was 200, so we went 201. We got the FIA record, and both of those records sat on the books for 19 years.
Wow.
And Honda brought a Formula One car out to the salt flats, rented the salt. They brought chefs. They had,
oh my gosh,
there was like 17 semis of Hondas out there, and they broke that record by 1 mile an hour.
Yeah.
They spent millions of dollars.
Yeah.
We spent $150 and 4 broken pistons and 2 rods.
Which this is the beauty of land speed racing, is that it can be done by, if anyone's listening and wants to get into it, you just got to start getting into it, and it can be done.
Chad Zupin, I mean.
Yeah.
200 miles an hour with a Pinto engine
on
90% nitro. That got my attention.
Throw some more nitro in it.
I was like, Chad, I actually had Chad come and talk to me because I've never run nitro, and now we're running 90% in the 59 car. Yeah. And Chad really was helpful to kind of get me on the right track, because when you're running nitro methane, you can just burn stuff up really fast, which we have. we haven't gotten off scot-free for sure.
No. But I like it. I like that style. Throw some more nitro in it.
And the 3 club chapter I did in Dad's Royal Purple Stream.
So let's back up really quick and just how did you get? So you're out there doing this now. What is your dad doing at this?
Nothing. He's racing. He's still he's not even involved in the salt flats, right? And as a matter of fact, when I'd go and say, "Hey, I'm going to be off next week. I'm going to the salt," he'd kind of get grumpy and tell me, "What are you wasting your time out there for?" And blah blah blah.
So funny.
And then he turns out to be like. One of the
bigger names out there,
bigger names.
So, and your dad's Terry Nish. I don't even know if we said that. So just so
my dad's Terry Nish, and he passed away a few years ago, and he loved the salt flats.
Yeah,
that was his. He would sit even when he was sick. At the end, he would sit in his office, in his chair, and plot and plan about how they were going to get 400 miles an hour with that car.
Yeah,
and. Mike's carrying that on. Andy's driving now, my nephew. And so he's got his AA now. I think he might have his unlimited. No, he's got his AA, and he'll do his unlimited when he goes.
Yeah.
So Andy, my nephew, races. My son, Brady. 2 nephews, Chauncey and Channing. Jake Peterson, which is, I guess,
much family.
Another nephew. These kids all grew up racing go-karts together.
And this is really neat too, because you started racing go-karts with them and just so you dragged in your 2 nephews, your son,
and all their buddies.
To come racing. So you're introducing them into this next kind of era of.
So we did go-karts for a few years. Then we went to Pro 4s. And now I'm dragging these kids all over the West, Vegas, Idaho, Wyoming. And they're 14, 15 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And loved every minute of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so wait, I want to talk about this because this is this next thing, but we didn't get into how you got into 300 mile an hour chapter.
Yeah, so Dad's car was all prepped and ready to go. And I normally don't do, me, I build my stuff and then drive it.
Yes, but you got your dad to come back out to the salt.
I got my dad to come back out to the salt. And in return for that, after they had done some stuff, he said, I got this set up for you, to run. And so it was October 97. And I ran 357, I think. Yeah. And I had an exit speed of 375.
And what class was it? Something streamliner?
Something streamliner. It eludes me right now.
Was it fuel?
It was fuel.
Okay, so it was a fuel streamline or something.
I get out of the car, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself, right? I'm walking around the pits. I got my feathers up. I'm strutting around, got my blue hat on, and somebody comes over and says, hey, did you hear they broke the sound barrier with the SST car at Black Rock this morning? And I'm like, oh, the guy just went twice as fast as I went, right? Yeah.
You're like, oh,
sound barrier.
No. But you still got your. Yeah, I got. Who was it that did it? Was it?
That was Richard Noble and Andy Green.
And Andy Green. Okay,
when they broke the sound barrier, it was the same day. It just happened to be. Like I said, I had my feathers all strutted out and was thinking I was pretty cool. But
well, you still had your.
There's always somebody faster.
Yes, that's right.
There's always somebody.
Unless you're Andy Green, maybe there isn't.
Or George Poteet.
Or George Poteet. Maybe there isn't somebody faster.
I mean, we're talking about legends now.
Yeah.
So I have a AA. a double A blown Streamliner, 2 engines, one in the front, one in the back.
Right.
And I was really excited about running that car, and I still am.
Yeah.
And then George went and put that record at 470 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Birkeland owned it at 413. Doable.
Yeah.
Dangerous, but doable.
Yeah.
470, not really interested.
That's getting close to 500.
Yeah, not really interested at this
You're
point.
rounding up to the 500. Yeah, that is really fast. Okay, so let's talk about the next generation really quick. So you got your kids into circle track racing, and then I remember all of a sudden they're all at my house working on the Roadster.
So what started that was they were racing go-karts, and I went and I took them to the U.S. Off-Ferrari meet, and I brought all their go-karts out, and I went over and I paid the $130 for each kid to get 5 passes.
Okay.
And all of a sudden the officials are all down there going, no, and they weren't going to let them run. They were only 13, I think, or something, and they were going to run down the course in an open go-kart.
Yeah.
So this is going on, and your dad stayed right out of it. He didn't want to influence, or pull any influence on it. And so I'm working with the officials, and Monty Wolf came over. And
Monty Wolf's come up the last two.
Monty Wolf came over and said, let him ride.
Nice.
Let him go. So those kids ran up and down that salt. They looked like little glazed jelly donuts because they were all salty when it was over.
Oh my God.
But that was it. They were asking me, please, how can we build a car? And so I talked to your dad, and he's taking those kids in like grandkids. Yeah. Right?
Right.
I mean, he treats them like they're grandkids, and they go work on his car. And
he's just as grumpy to them as they are to the rest of us.
So my son, Brady, had an opportunity to get in the 2 club in my dad's car. And he told my dad, no. Yeah. I'm doing it in Larry Volk's Roadster. I'm going to get in the club, but I'm going to do it in the Roadster.
Wow. And it was a long journey.
And it was a long 10 years.
10 years.
10 years of blowing engines and frustration. And the picture of him standing on the hood of the car when we all got down there with his arms raised.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it still chokes me up.
I know. It
still chokes me up. And my dad was sick at the time, and Brady, it was his birthday. It was Dad's birthday.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Dad's birthday, and he was able to call Dad. He wasn't there, and so that chokes me up. Sorry.
I know. That's all right. But, that's what it's. That's really kind of special that it was on his birthday.
It was really special.
Yeah. And your dad, I'm sure, was extremely happy.
Elated.
Yeah.
But growing up, watching you guys grow up, Dallas had a long road to get in the club. And I hadn't been out for a few years. Business and stuff had, taken its toll on me. I'd kind of lost my way and forgotten where my priorities lie. And I'd missed a couple of years ago in the salt. And your dad called me and said, hey, come out. We need whatever support. We've been, this is like Dallas is like 14 years or something?
Yeah. Oh, it was a really long road for Dallas.
And so I came out and I said, Dallas, I brought all the mojo with me. We're going to get it done. And that was the year he got it done.
That was the year he got it in.
And I don't think I've missed since then.
Yeah.
I kind of got my priorities straight again.
Oh, man. And you do. You really do bring the whole crew, and you run you have your own business, and basically you sacrifice because 10 people probably take off to come out racing.
It's hard, but I tell everybody the same thing. We work so we can race.
Right.
I could have had a job anywhere I wanted to get a job going, but I wanted my own business so that I had the flexibility and the financial means to it.
Right.
It's not cheap, right?
Yeah.
It's a fun hobby, and it's an expensive hobby.
Yeah.
So all those kids know the drill. They know they got to work hard. They know we're there to make money, so that money, so that some of that money can get spent, going fast.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's really neat how much you really have contributed to just including a lot of people into racing and introducing them into salt flats racing. And I think, and it feels very family-like in our pits. Our pits are fairly. There's a lot of people. Yeah.
We open our meet with a prayer.
Yeah.
We have, Terry come down, the Salt Flats chaplain.
And, Terry Lane.
And Terry Lane come and put a blessing on us. And then from then on, it's, let's
race.
Go have fun. And
yeah.
We argue and we have our family, right?
Yes, right. But it's very, I think that's a lot what the Salt Flats and land speed racing is it is very family inclusive. And I feel like you're building a next generation. I'm helping build a next generation so we can keep this going.
I watched you riding your bike around the pit.
Right.
I watched Brady riding his bike around the pit. Now Nash and Wired are riding their pit bikes around the pit.
Yeah, they're just having.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. So that is, you've been really great about that. So let's get into some of your current and future projects. So right now you are on the 59.
I'm on the 59 program right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where your focus is. So what are you doing with that? So the 59 is a 29 Highboy Roadster. And you are running what class in that?
We are running F Fuel Roadster.
Yes.
And we are right back to where I started. We've got a V4 Chevy.
I was thinking that I was like, no wonder he likes this engine so much. We are right back
to where I started. So Jake Peterson's our driver for this. And folks, I have taken a lot of heat over this because that car in the wind tunnel tells us we need a minimum of 600 horsepower to go 200. The record's 205. And for 2.5 years, we went 179 every pass.
Right.
And everybody everybody was like, pull it out, get it out, stop. And I just kept going, no. And Jake's hung in there with me.
I know. And I'm over there going, throw more nitro in it.
Sidebar with Jake is I'm like, Jake, I'm going to get you a red hat and we're going to do it with this 4-cylinder engine. And now we're running 90% nitro in a Chevy motor, which everybody says can't be done. Yeah. We've been 199 now.
Yeah. You guys are 199. You guys are getting close.
Right there.
Yeah.
And Jake has held his head up and he's going to rue the day. Those other boys are going to rue the day he gets his red hat with that motor.
He's taking a lot of crap and a lot of heat. But
every time he goes 179, they're like, well, Jake, if you just stand on the gas or whatever.
Jake, yeah, they're mean. They're mean to
each other,
Jake, yes.
Yeah.
So the 59's near
let's talk about that, though. You know, so I have some things in my head. One is my wife would really like to be in the 2 Club.
Yes.
Secretly, she doesn't talk a lot about it, right? Around the salt, but you can see it.
Yeah.
But you can see it.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on a project for Melanie right now, which I think is going to be, the record is 259 with a AA motor in Brady's car.
259, that's a lucky number.
In Brady's car. In the modified 590,
the modified Roadster.
Yes, okay. I shouldn't say Brady's car, in our car. So that's something I want to do. But I tell you, I'm concerned about. I'd like to build another Roadster with your dad, and we've talked about it. Like maybe because those guys are going 290 now, 300.
Yeah,
I think we need a new car to do that.
Yeah.
The problem is, folks, with the condition of the Salt Flats right now, how much money does a person spend and how much time do we spend when we don't know from year to year whether we're going to have any salt left to race on?
That's right.
And I don't know how much you've touched on that in your...
I haven't got into it, but I'm going to start doing it some more, especially after this.
Just a short thing is, the aquifer underneath the salt has been damaged from the mining for 100 years. Nobody's not blaming anybody. 100 years ago in 1903, I think they started issuing licenses to pump water for potash out from underneath the groundwater. Well, the groundwater now has no brine in it anymore.
Yeah.
So the salt is just deteriorating. Every time it rains, it goes down in, but there's no salinity in the groundwater for when it comes back up to lay another layer of salt down. When I started out there with you guys in 86, there was probably a good 4 or 5 inches.
Oh, right. Right.
And I think that's right when people started noticing, why don't we have 3 feet anymore?
Yeah.
Right. Now we have a half inch. To an inch of salt, and it's a tough situation. Congress has approved the restoration program, but not funded it yet. The state has approved the restoration program, but has not funded it yet. The racers, $2.5 million, is sitting waiting.
We're waiting
to give it to the mine.
Because that was the deal.
Yes.
We had to raise our money. We've done our end of it, and the government's not doing it. So you really can't blame somebody. You can blame the government.
But it's been approved, and we need the congressmen and women to get together and release the
funds.
Money. This is a natural wonder of the world. It needs to be saved.
Yes,
it
and a
needs
legacy
to be restored.
With the racing alone on it is I think a legacy type. Makes it that, I don't know how to explain it, but makes it something that's worth saving because people from around the world desire to come out here.
You say Bonneville Salt Flats and people, I go all over the country and have been around the world, business and racing. And everywhere I go, you say Bonneville Salt Flats and they immediately, maybe it's the Blue Flame, maybe it's the Spirit of America, maybe but it's on their bucket list to get there.
Oh, yeah.
And we've had a few people in our pit that have just showed up. We don't know them, right? They just come in our pit.
There was a guy from England last year
that stayed the whole week with us.
Right.
And we just invite him in. But you see those people that they finally made it.
Yes.
They're like Burt Monroe with the
Indian.
The Indian.
Mm-hmm.
They finally made it to Bonneville, and they just sit there the entire time with a big grin on their face.
Yeah.
Just in awe of everything happening. Right. We need to save it, and we do. We need the help of the legislation, and we don't know how. I mean, we thought it was a done deal, right? It was approved at Congress. It was approved in the state of Utah. Then COVID hit, and so just for a little, what they're going to do is all the salt and all the brine is across the road at the mine.
It's there.
The mine has offered to put that back into solution and then pump it back over to the salt. Will bring the aquifer content of salt back up, and things should start to heal. But of course, the mine has to be paid to do that. We need the money.
Then they can't even, because they have to do a whole bunch of upgrades. The mine does.
They got to buy pumps.
And when they did that pump project for a few years, you really saw an improvement. So we know it works.
Right.
And so what you need to do is you need to go to savethesalt.org. And there's letters of support. I think that is right now what they need is just a flood of people saying, listen, this is ridiculous.
Everywhere we go, we take the Save the Salt stuff with us, and people are always happy to donate.
Right.
I know we've got our money secured.
Right.
Our portion of the money is secured.
But now we just need to put a little bit of pressure.
When we talk about new projects, right?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I'm like, what is going to happen here?
Yeah.
Do I invest $100,000?
Yeah.
And sit down with your dad and design a new car and start building a new piece?
That may or may not.
Or do we go drag racing? I don't know. I'm very, very concerned after this last week or 2 weeks ago when we lost the salt.
Right. And I think we would, if the salt was in better shape, we would be racing. So now World of Speed got canceled, which is the next meet. And then today they announced World Finals has gotten canceled, which is at the end of September. They want to let it rest, but I think that we would be racing if the salt was in better condition.
We as racers, and I know when we went out to get our trailers and came back off, we had to have done some damage. Just trying to get our trailers out of there. They need to let it heal now for a minute.
Right. But
I agree with BNI's. I agree.
I totally agree with their decision.
If it was a foot thick, it would just go in and we'd be done. Right?
And I totally agree with both of their decisions. I think it was wise to let it heal. But I'm just saying, if it was if it was where it's supposed to be, it wouldn't even. It would be fine. It would have. It wouldn't have. The water would have soaked up easier. We could be racing. Yeah. But and people want to say, oh, like the salt that comes off the racers or us driving on it, but that is a drop in the bucket.
Drop.
In compared to what.
And most of us walk around our trailers and walk around our trucks and kick off all the big stuff.
Right. Nobody wants salt. Take salt home.
Before we start heading out.
Right. And nobody does. But even if that wasn't the case, it still is just so minuscule compared to what's being taken.
When I started racing out there, they still did the black line with oil.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, we got smart enough to go, that's bad.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? Right.
Yeah.
Like, and so now they use blue food coloring.
Yeah.
To mark the track out. And, so I think the racers are very conscious. When we leave there, it's clean.
Yeah. The racers love the salt.
When we went out there for test and tune,
yeah.
Dennis Sullivan and your dad and I drove down the track. There were fire pits all over the salt flats.
Oh, yeah.
Where campers had gone out there and had a fire, and all the logs were still there, half burned.
Yep.
Big fire pit in the middle of the salt. So you'll never see that with the racers out there. Ever.
No, we love the salt and we want to take care of it. And that whole, with Instagram and stuff, the salt has become really big to take pictures out there. And for a while they were
weddings.
Well, they were paddleboarding in that chemical-filled canal. But they stopped that. But it's become a popular spot for like these people that do Instagram and stuff.
I think at the beginning of this whole journey with Save the Salt, it was kind of the racers versus the mine, right? And that has all turned now.
It has.
It's like, hey, it's not the mine's fault that they had a lease.
Yeah.
We need the mine.
We need the mine.
We need the mine to help us get that back across the road. They don't want those beds sitting over there full of salt either.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's no good to them. They want the potash.
That's just a byproduct.
They want to get it back over there. And so if you're listening and you go to Save the Salt and you can contact your congressman and say, hey, what's the status?
Right.
Every little.
I mean, if any little pressure, we know that helps. And there's letters that they have that are kind of outlines. They have a store. So if you wanted to go donate money to get a shirt, that's available. Yeah. So
and that money's been instrumental in the SEMA attorneys.
Yes.
Helping.
Yes.
Us. The attorneys for SEMA are the attorneys for Rustine, right?
Or any kind of lobbyist that we have. That we have a lobbyist for the Utah State Legislature. We have to pay those people
to go do their, go do what they need to do. And so, I want to make that clear that it is not the racers against the mine, and it's really not us against Congress. It's just like we know how slow the wheels of Congress move,
sometimes,
and it's not fast enough for what's happening at the salt right now.
Yep.
So anyway,
and I am glad you bring that up because I haven't brought that up a lot yet, and my dad talked about it a little bit when I had him on. So
and I think that as we all talk about projects, I know I've talked to several other racers, and I'm like, hey, what's next for you guys? And they're the same thing. They're like, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do. Yeah. Do we go?
Well, and the lake bed is having issues too, the El Mirage, and so I think that is part of the problem.
El Mirage was canceled in July or something. Their last meet.
Yeah, I
think
they're having this next one, but
It sounds like the next one's going to go.
Yeah, I think so.
My boys were trying to talk me into that today, and I said, heck no. We're not going to El Mirage.
I've never been. I kind of want to go one time.
I saw my dad's truck and trailer when they came back from El Mirage in the race car, and I was like, I don't want to do it. It's just all dirty.
Yeah, I've heard it's pretty dusty, but I would like to go try it one time, see what it's like. At least just go visit and hang out. But so, any other future projects that you have? Anything you're doing with the Streamliner?
I got to be honest with you. I kind of have some of the same things that my dad has with my lungs.
Yeah.
And I had COVID, and then I got type B flu right after. I mean, like within 2 weeks. And right now, I'm not healthy enough to
think about such things.
I got in it the other day when no boys were there, right? I didn't want them to see the old man.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so the old man, I climbed in there and I buckled in and I sat back and I just started to have some breathing issues. And I thought, okay. So I went and saw my pulmonologist, Dr. Pearl, which your mother used to work for, and got me in there. And I said, I need to get healthier so I can. I'm 61 now, Allison.
I can't believe that. It doesn't seem like that. You just seem, you don't seem like you're 61.
So I do have some, and I don't think anybody wants to drive it except for me. They want to see me go down first, at like 350, and then they'll all want to drive.
Let's see. It'd be fun to get some blue hats.
It has a motor in the front and a motor in the back, but it's old school. Right? Yeah. There's no computers running anything. It's all driver fill. You're looking at 2 sets of gauges. There's a lot happening in there, but I have only got one running. It's so fun. I want to go again, but I need to work on my health and
get healthy,
lose some weight. Dr. Pearl told me, he said, it's been 6 years and 30 pounds since I've seen you.
He's brutal. My mom used to say he's brutal to people about that.
6 years and 30 pounds since I've seen you last. So I'm going to work on that hard over the winter and hopefully next spring.
All right. We want you around for a long time. More racing, more roadsters. Jeff is definitely a gem in the land speed racing world. So
I think your podcast is awesome.
Thank you. I'm so glad
I don't know why you called me when you're talking about legends, but you have.
Hey, everyone's a legend in their own mind out there, right? So
I tell you, I remember watching Al Teague. At dusk. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And he'd always wait until he'd do his first run down, and he'd always wait until dusk, and then he'd start that beast up, and the fire coming out, and he'd come screaming down there at over 400, and that's a land speed legend. That's a land speed legend.
Hey, he is. You're one. I think there's a lot of them out there. So I am so glad you came on this podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing up Save the Salt.
You're welcome.
And so if you guys want to go to SaveTheSalt.org, go there, check it out. Make sure to contact your congressman and or senator, and both state and federal. And you want to say something?
And just know, if you ever come to the Salt Flats and it's your first time, come down and find the 59 and 590. We welcome everybody in our pit.
That's right. Come check us out.
Strangers, they sit and have lunch with us, right? They have lunch with us, sit under our tents, have a cold beverage while you're watching the cars, and get to know about what we do a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's pretty across the board. A lot of pits are that way.
I think so.
We're just especially cool, but that's just personal. So, okay. Well, yes, share this podcast if you like it. And just please go to my Facebook and Instagram page. It's Land Speed Legends, and like it and follow. I appreciate y'all listening. I really do appreciate Jeff for coming out of his busy day, and you guys have a great one.
Thanks for listening to Land Speed Legends. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, keep up with the show on Facebook and Instagram under Land Speed Legends. Until next time.